We will be posting all the recordings on our YouTube channel, which I will put in the Dropbox later here when I'm done. Okay. Anyway, so therefore I'm going to turn this over to Brad. He will be our moderator for today. And I'm going to now get rid of my video.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Thank you for the privilege of being with you today. We have a very important topic and very timely topic about disaster and emergency planning for persons with disabilities. We have great speakers lined up for you this afternoon. And so I'm going to give a little bit of an overview here, and then I'm going to turn it over to our speakers, and I'll be facilitating the discussion. If you have any questions, put them in the question and answer box, and I'll do my best to keep up with those questions and pose them to the appropriate presenter. So without further ado, I would like to kind of get started. So the first thing is disaster preparedness for and by people with disabilities. Sort of the purpose today is to highlight the need for people with disabilities and their families to weather natural disasters or other types of emergencies. And the focus today will be on the individual level, talking about tips and resources to help individuals or families to plan ahead and stay safe. Our two guest speakers today are Julie Schulte. She is the Disability Integration Specialist with the American Red Cross, the Nebraska and Iowa region, and David Whalen, who is the Project Director at Niagara University's first an Emergency Responder Disability Awareness Training Program. Always be prepared. That's sort of the theme for today. Natural disasters and emergencies do happen, sometimes with warning, sometimes with little to no warning. But everyone needs to be prepared for these disasters, know what to do, where to go, and how they will stay safe. And this is especially important for people with disabilities and their families. And one of the things I think we want you to leave today is with the question, ask yourself, are you adequately prepared? Here are some really good resources that I found that might be helpful for you after this presentation. The Center for Disease Control, the CDC, has a really good web page. I've listed it here for you. And on the right-hand side of the screen, they have different categories of resources for caregivers, for emergency managers, first responders, and for organizations themselves. So I would encourage you to go check out that web page and see what resources there would be appropriate for you.
Excuse me, Brad, you're not moving your presentation forward.
Oh, well, let me, is this better, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay. So here are the resources links for the resources from the Center for Disease Control's webpage. And again, on the one side, you've got categories of individuals and or organizations and resources dedicated to those particular types of individuals. And I found two videos, quick videos that I thought really kind of set the stage for today. I don't intend to cover areas that our presenters will cover subsequently, but I just wanted to have a couple of videos that I think really kind of set the stage and the foundation for the discussion that will be forthcoming. So with your indulgence, I would like to show them.
No, the video is not showing for whatever it is. So now you don't have any sound, Brad.
Every individual can take important steps to prepare for emergencies and put plans in place in case of a disaster in your community. If you have a disability or other access or functional need, you may have to take additional steps to protect yourself and your family.
People with disabilities and people who have access and functional needs have to take a very proactive position in their personal preparedness.
If you think about it, we do it every day. We're ready for the next little disaster that we will face every day.
I always say, prepare as if no one's coming to rescue you, because the reality is in a moderate or large event, no one is coming to rescue you anytime soon.
It may be a very short period of time, it may be a more extended period of time, but you need to prepare as if you're not going to have any of the resources that you might typically depend on.
The best way people can start to plan is by looking at the individual parts of their daily lives and figuring out where the potential gaps are.
Do an inventory of yourself, do an inventory of the things that you use on a daily basis to be living independently, and then think about what is essential.
Think about the strategies, services, devices, tools, and techniques you use to live with a disability on a daily basis. These may include medications, durable medical equipment, service animals, assistive technology, communication tools, and transportation.
You really have to be focused as to what are your needs if you end up going to a shelter for 4 or 5 days, or if you're stuck in sheltering in place because people just can't get to you. What are the essential things that you're going to need to be able to survive?
As you think about assembling a support team, you need to be thinking about who are the people in your workplace, who are the people in your neighborhood, who are the people in your community, who might be able to assist you.
Go over your emergency plan with everyone in your support network. Make sure that someone in your personal support network has an extra key to your home and knows where you keep your emergency supplies. And teach them how to use any life-saving equipment or administer medicine in case of an emergency.
It's important that you find out in those places where you receive services on a regular basis, you find out what their emergency plans are. Ask them. If you are a person who gets dialysis, what are their emergency plans? If you're a person who uses paratransit services, what are their emergency plans for providing paratransit?
A standard emergency kit includes water, food, and medicine to sustain all members of your household for at least 3 days. Visit ready.gov for a complete list of suggested items, along with recommendations for how to prepare a family emergency plan.
Everybody needs to have a kit, and a kit really needs to have some very basic things in it, some water, some food. Then you're going to want to customize that kit to make sure that it has the things that you need.
Individuals with access and functional needs may want to consider some of the following items: extra glasses or hearing aids, battery chargers or extra batteries, copies of medical prescriptions, supplies for service animals, and necessary medical supplies. Visit ready.gov for a complete list of suggested emergency items for people with access and functional needs.
People with disabilities and access and functional needs are their own emergency managers. They know what they need on an everyday basis. And what my kit looks like is very different than somebody else's kit.
You want to be thinking about what is it going to take for you, both in your home and out of your home, to be able to maintain your health, your safety, your independence for a period of, a few hours to perhaps a few days. Preparedness is actually a 365-day-a-year activity that all of us should take very seriously. It's important that every day we do a little something to keep ourselves as prepared as we possibly can.
The most empowering thing you can do is take charge for yourself during disaster, during the little storms and the big storms. And that's probably the most positive thing you can ever do for yourself as a person. Because that gives you control. That gives you control over the outcomes.
Download this brochure about preparing for disaster for people with disabilities and other access and functional needs from ready.gov. Check out the other information available on the site and get started preparing today.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Let me cancel that.
Our goal.
And let's see, let me get back to it. Great. And then the second video here is the emergency preparedness for all.
The following takes place immediately after an earthquake in Anchorage, Alaska. The setting is fictional. The need for disaster preparedness is not.
Are you Rhonda?
Yes?
I met you in Fremont, California.
Rudy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember. I met you in Fremont, California. Your aunt taught for the School of the Deaf in Fremont?
Yeah, that's my aunt. She taught there for many years, but retired some time ago.
Why are you here?
I just moved up here a month ago.
I moved here from San Francisco right after that horrible earthquake in 1989. I learned so much from that experience. It helped me to be more prepared for any disaster. Thank goodness it helped me keep calm through this one.
What do you mean?
Well, I was watching TV with my son, and I felt this shaking. started shattering. And the shelves fell over. Things were falling everywhere. My wheelchair fell over, and I had to pull it back up with my cane. And then everything went black.
Wow.
I was lucky to have my cell phone in my pocket, so I texted my neighbor and asked for help. We had to find the radio. It was dark, but I remember that my cell phone had a light on it. So we used that to find the radio and used it to find a shelter. Luckily, I had my emergency kit with me, and we came here to the shelter.
Wow. Seems you learned a lot from that experience. I'm glad you planned ahead. That's excellent.
I needed to plan ahead. It's important. It really helped me feel safe during a disaster. It was really important to make a list of important information, like my kids' school, insurance information, and family contacts. Oh, and it's really important that we have 2 separate meeting places, so that in a disaster, my family knows where to find us.
Why? Why would you set up 2 different meeting places?
Well, if we have an earthquake or a fire or anything, and if one meeting place is damaged or destroyed, we know where to go for the second meeting place, like a school or a grocery store. And it's important that I write down important information about my family medication needs. I practice with my son 4 times a year. It's important to practice with family and children. Practice more often if you have children with special needs.
Where would I get more information?
Go to www.ready.gov.
Great. I'll check out the website when the electricity comes back on.
We really rely on technology these days to let family know we're okay. We can send an email, text, or use social media to communicate with others. Thank goodness for technology. Now that I have a kid, my son and I are prepared to stay at home for up to 7 days.
Why 7 days?
Because we are so far from the lower 48. It can take a while to get supplies up here. So we need to be prepared at home, have non-perishable food and water. Each person should have 1 gallon of water per day for up to 7 days. So for my son and I, it's 14 gallons between the 2 of us. I also need to have important documents, family contacts, medication, extra cash, flashlight, and a radio. It's important to have extra batteries, and also some spare change.
So, hold on. You can't hear. What do you need a radio for?
Well, I can use a radio because members of my family can hear, and they can listen and write things down for me.
You mentioned it's important to have cash. Why not just use an ATM?
Because the power is out. You can't use an ATM. So it's important to have cash.
Good point. So, if I'm going to evacuate my home, how am I supposed to carry all those gallons of water?
I have a small go kit in a backpack. It has enough supplies for 2 days. It's important you have water. Also, a flashlight with batteries, and don't put the batteries in the flashlight, but on the outside. A first aid kit, something easy to carry. Some food, something that will last. A space blanket that can keep you warm. It kind of looks like aluminum foil. A radio. These are always important to have. Plus, have a notepad and pencil to help you communicate with hearing people. And there you have it.
So, where would I get this list of supplies?
Go to www.muni.org/OEM, which is the Office of Emergency Management.
Thank you for your time explaining all this. Next time, I'm going to be prepared. You never know when this will happen next.
No problem.
So again, though the intent was just to use those videos to kind of set the stage and to broach the topic, our subsequent presenters will go into further detail and other issues, but I just kind of wanted to get a general overview and a sense of the issue today. And I don't want to stand in the way of the presenters. So I would like to turn over the microphone, if you will, to Julie Schulte. Julie?
Hello, everyone. So my name, as Brad said, is Julie Schulte. I am a Red Cross volunteer with the Nebraska and Iowa region. I have several different hats that I wear, and one is the reason I'm here today is because I am the disability integration specialist, which sounds so impressive, but I don't know. I think everybody else stepped back and I stepped forward. So that's where we're at. And I will explain more about disability integration with the Red Cross as well as the Red Cross itself later on. But our first topic is going to be family and individual preparedness. Let me know if you can't hear me, or let Brad know, I guess, if you can't hear me. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat room right now, so we'll keep going. You can do the next slide. So why should we prepare? I think those two videos were great. They pointed out several different things that you'll see repeated in mine and maybe Dave's, which is always a good thing to see some repetition. And of course, we'll also present some new facts too. So prepare because it just makes you feel better. It makes you feel ready and you'll know what to do. You'll know where to go and you'll think about what you need. So when a person has disabilities or any kind of functional needs, they have to think a little extra about different items that they're going to need, and we'll talk about that. They also need to have a special exit plan so that they have enough time to leave their home if they have to evacuate. So by also preparing, you're going to reduce the losses. So later on, we'll get into that with things like smoke detectors. So if you have those in place, you're going to have a better chance of surviving a fire and have less damage to your home. Next. Is this real? I want everyone, if you take one thing away from my talk today, is just plan that it is real. Because you might hear sirens going off and think, oh, it's just practice, but it might not be. So turn on your radios or however, social media, whatever, to try to get more information, but just plan that it's real. Disasters have long-lasting effects. I was in New Orleans a year after Hurricane Katrina, working with Habitat for Humanity, helping to gut houses. And we had plastic containers up in the attics that were full of water. And it was just still a mess a year later. People had still not moved back home. So it has long-lasting effects. Although help might be available, you should be ready. I really liked in the video where it said prepare as if no one is coming. And so even though there are firefighters, police, paramedics around, they're going to be busy. So if you can relieve them and they don't have to help you, they can help other people. So that's real important. Oops, I wasn't ready. Sorry, I paused. Different disasters require different responses, and we'll talk a little about that. And then the lady in the video talked a little bit about supplies you need. With the Red Cross, we talk about having 3 days minimum of supplies if you have to stay in place. And then you also want to think about making sure you have the maximum amount of medications so that you're not going to run low if you have to evacuate or you're stuck at home. Also, you want to have phone numbers of all of the medical needs that you have. Next. On a personal note, of course, you need an emergency kit, and we'll talk about the details of that later on. Have a communication plan. So your local government obviously has the sirens and the loudspeakers, but you can also sign up for text or phone calls to alert you about different emergencies. So try to find out what your options are. And then there's always social media, which make sure who are you listening to on social media so that it's credible. And there are road signs a lot of times telling you where to go if there's a Red Cross shelter open somewhere. Plan for your personal needs for each person in the family. And it's going to be different for each person, you know, different medications, different needs. And also if they're away from home at times, plan as if they're at home, because you're not going to know if they're home from college or they're not when a disaster happens.
Julie, excuse me.
Yes.
Are people seeing the interpreters?
I don't know. Oh, it looks like in the chat room it says no.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to take off my video?
No, it should be.
Do you want me to instruct them on how to see just the presenter and the interpreter so they don't have to look for them?
I don't want to do that. Well,
Kim, do you see the interpreter now? Okay. If you need to see the interpreter, I want you to go down to the toolbox and there is a video camera down there. You can click on the little mark next to it. A little screen will pop up and I want you to go to video settings. In video settings, if you go down, you'll have to slide down to the bottom section of that. There is a little box for hide non-video participants. That will allow you to only see the interpreter and the presenter. If you have any problems doing that, leave me a mark in the chat box.
Mary,
Yes.
I just said thank you.
Oh, okay. And Shauna, I did write them in for a couple of folks, but I will put it back in there again. Thanks. Sorry
Okay.
about that, everybody.
That's fine. So are we ready to continue then?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Okay, I assume we're continuing from where I left off.
Got on. Yeah.
Okay. So we're on the personal preparedness page. Halfway down, it's important that you plan on having a place to meet your family in case in the chaos you get separated. So if there's a fire, you're going to meet outside, preferably across the street. If there's a disaster of some kind and you get separated, you're going to meet somewhere outside of your neighborhood. ICE means in case of emergency. Whoops, we're not ready yet. And you want to put emergency phone numbers in your phone as well as on paper. Sometimes you might not have your cell phone on you, or the cell phone towers are not working because of damage, such as with a hurricane. So make sure you always write things down. Don't rely on your cell phone. And it's a good idea to have a long distance contact person. I have my sister for my emergency contact, and she only lives a couple miles away. So if there was a hurricane, she's going to be busy. I'm going to be busy. So we need somebody outside of the state probably that can be a connecting point. And you should tell schools and daycares of that long distance contact person too, in case of a big emergency. And then always make sure you plan for a pet, what you need to do. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too. Next. So these are just some pictures. First of all, I should tell you that I got a PowerPoint from Gina Troncone, who is also a Red Cross person who's wonderful, and she sent me her PowerPoint, so I got some ideas off of that for today's presentation. So this is one of her great videos, or I'm sorry, photos. It shows the variety of disasters that can happen to us. Next. As far as planning goes, each disaster can have a different plan. So a tornado, for example, means I'm going to stay at my house. I'm going to get down to the basement or wherever there's a safe location if you don't have a basement. If it's a different kind of a disaster, such as flooding or a hurricane, I'm sorry, we're not going to have a hurricane in Nebraska, probably, although we had the Iowa derecho this year, which was a category 3 or 4 hurricane, basically. So, you know, we need to be prepared for everything. So that might require an evacuation. So what disaster do we have in our area, and how are we going to respond to it? And there's throughout the slides, there are some links for you to check out to get some more information. Next. So a personal support network is really important if you're a person who has disabilities, because you're going to need some assistance, perhaps, first of all, in making your plan. And maybe you need assistance getting out of your home. And definitely after a disaster, you need an advocate or somebody on your side to help you find the resources you need. Again, there's a website listed here. As far as pets go, there's a nice video on YouTube about packing your emergency supply kit for your pets. Obviously food and water, but also toys and collars, etc. You want to think about an evacuation plan for your pet, and think about a hotel. You know, you don't want to just plan on going to any hotel. You need to call ahead, make these plans so you know whether they are pet friendly or not, and don't just have one hotel because they may have had damage from whatever disaster it is. So plan on a couple of hotels. Or would you prefer to board your pet and find out where that is, write down phone numbers? Or your other choice obviously is friend or family outside of the possible disaster area that could take care of your pet when you're not able to. Here's the list of your 3-day emergency kits. It is true that you might need to plan for more than 3 days, but as they said in the video, you need 1 gallon of water per person. So that's 3 gallons per person for the 3 days. You need a first aid kit, you need food. Don't forget silverware, can opener, cups, all those kinds of things, and realize that you might not have electricity. So you might have to eat food cold, or room temperature, I should say. You need a radio and batteries, or even better yet, you can get a hand crank radio, which is nice. And like they said, I liked how they mentioned, don't put the batteries in things. Keep them outside so they don't get old or don't work. So make sure you have all your medications. Probably that's going to be on a list so you know what to grab. If you have an extra set of eyeglasses, that could go in your emergency kit. Toiletries are good to have. And then just a list of any medication, or I'm sorry, medical needs, like a walker, CPAP, dentures, things like that. I can't tell you how many times I've worked in a shelter and people don't have their dentures or they don't have their eyeglasses. And after 2 weeks of that, it's just really hard to replace things, especially the eyeglasses and dentures. It's hard to live without those. A flashlight and the extra batteries is important. Cash and a credit card is good to have on hand. Identification is very important when you get to the point of wanting to get some financial assistance. And when it comes to the Red Cross, we need proof of residence, which means and a letter that you got from your utilities, like a bill from your cell phone company, something that has your name and your address on it so you can prove where you live. And then, of course, the pet supplies that we talked about. And don't just have an emergency kit, you have to look at it every now and then. So look at the expiration dates. I like to use a black magic marker and write the expiration dates on each can of canned goods or box so that you don't have to hunt around and find that expiration date each time. Obviously, you replace items that are expired. Use airtight containers for things like boxes of, food or whatever, granola bars. Store everything in easy to carry plastic totes. Don't make them in those huge plastic totes. They have to be easy for someone to carry. And then mark the outside of them so you know how many totes there are to grab. So 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, and then mark the date that you checked it last. So you can see once in a while and just look on the outside and say, oh, it's been a while since I looked at that. So, and then make sure everybody knows where these totes are located. Evacuation steps. Like I said before, just believe the warnings. You'll hear the sirens or something. You might think it's a test, but let's just pretend or assume that it's real. It's better for you to evacuate and then find out that it was a false alarm than for you to be stuck in your home and the firefighters or whoever have to come and rescue you, or they don't get to you in time. When you're evacuating, be aware of the different dangers in the streets, such as flooding or trees that are down. It's always good to fill your car as you're evacuating, even if you can take an extra container of gas safely. A lot of times I've seen different disasters I've been on where the gas stations are closed or the lines are so long to fill up with gas. You want to unplug and move electronics if we're talking about flooding. Fill containers with water so that when you come back home, you've got some water just in case your water is turned off. I know with our Iowa derecho storm this summer, there were people that lived without water for a week or two. You want to empty your trash if you have time to do that so that your house doesn't smell. Pack your emergency kit. bring all your medications. Look at that list that I'm hoping that you've written of things that you need to take with you that you use every day: medications, glasses, dentures, CPAPs, identification, any kind of special equipment that you use to make yourself as independent as possible. And the other thing is to leave early. A lot of times you're given, they say they want you to leave in a certain amount of time. Don't wait till the end of that time. Leave early so you can fill the car up with gas. You can make sure you've packed everything you can. Excuse me. You want to prepare even before an evacuation. We've kind of talked about a little of this already. You want to list a couple of options, like I said, just in case one hotel isn't available. You want to have be familiar with, is there a family or friend where you can go, an evacuation center? With the Red Cross, we have a variety of shelters that we open when there's a disaster. So I couldn't even tell you right now, if I was in Omaha, Nebraska, what center or area we're going to open, but it's just determined. And then, like I say, it's communicated where a person can go, whether that's a school or a church, or I've been in shelters in casinos. So that was kind of fun, to be honest. Obviously have your list of items to bring. I can't emphasize that enough, because you can't put everything in that evacuation kit. You're going to need your medications and your eyeglasses to use every day. So have that list of what you need to bring in addition to your evacuation. Plot your routes and alternate routes, like I said, in case you can't get from one spot to the next because of trees or flooding. Have your routes on your cell phone, which is great, but also have them written down on paper. Again, because sometimes the cell phone towers are not working, so you want to be ready. Practice evacuating twice a year, which includes even packing up and being ready. And like we said before, plan for your pets. Don't leave a pet at home. If you have to evacuate, they should not be left at home. Next. I wanted to focus a little bit on fires. Here are some facts. It's crazy how many fires happen in homes, how much injuries, how many millions, billions of dollars. And also be aware that you only have 2 minutes to get out of your house safely. So if you are a person who has access issues, functional needs, you really need to plan ahead of what you're going to do. You really need to practice, because you don't have a lot of time. I listed here the most common causes, starting with cooking, and this season is the time of Christmas trees. So be sure you water your Christmas trees if you have live trees. Next. Fire prevention tips. Obviously, number one is installing smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. You can typically, in the time that's not COVID, you can call the Red Cross or call your local fire department, and they will install smoke detectors in your home free of charge. And it's a wonderful thing because they know where to put them. So when it's not COVID, please make sure that you get everything you need for your home. You want to test them monthly. And one thing I learned after joining the Red Cross is just because you hear the sound of the alarm or you see the light flashing doesn't mean that the smoke detector is going to work if there's a fire or smoke. Because every 10 years you should replace your smoke alarm, because it can get dusty and then it won't respond as well as it should. So although you're supposed to test them, make sure you also replace them. You should always have the date that it gets put in on the outside of your smoke detector so you know when to replace it. Be sure everybody knows the fire escape plan and practice it. You should always know a couple of ways to get out of your house or out of each room. And then, like we said before, know where to meet outside. Even make sure everyone knows how to call 911. Some people, you might need to write it down somewhere, like in the kitchen. But even a 6-year-old, can save lives by calling 911. Everyone should know to stop, drop, and roll if they catch on fire, and never, ever go back inside. the fire department will come in with their gear and they can rescue a pet or whatever, but never go back inside. Next. This is kind of a fuzzy slide, I'm sorry, but it shows you the different places to put smoke detectors and carbon monoxide alarms. On the right is for a single story residence, on the left is for multi-story. Obviously, you never put them in the kitchen because if you're cooking, it's going to go off all the time. There should be one in each bedroom, should be one on each level, and hallways are important too. Next. And now you can see that I am not good at PowerPoints because this went off the page and I didn't notice it until after I sent this in. So full disclosure, technology is not my best strong point, but I think you can see the links pretty well at the bottom. The last one says .hotmail, HTML. So I don't know if anybody can tidy that up or you can just type it in, but the CDC has a very nice presentation there for people who have disabilities. Next. So next I want to talk briefly about the American Red Cross, what we do. I think a lot of people are sometimes confused about what we do or how many different things we do. Obviously, we provide emergency assistance. I think most people know that we set up shelters. And like I said, that can be in schools or a casino or wherever. We also supply food. In September, I was down in Louisiana for the hurricane. And my job then was to help 40 different hotels to get food 3 times a day. We had over 25,000 meals that I was coordinating from different vendors so that the people were fed every day. We were using hotels because of COVID. Typically, we would use the shelters like I was mentioning. We also hand out supplies. So for example, I responded to a tornado in Iowa one year and we handed out tarps for the rooftops and shovels and rakes and water and food and everything for people. And the Red Cross has great professional help. We have health services, which is made up of nurses and paramedics and other healthcare professionals who can help people who have disabilities to make sure they get the medications they need, they get the equipment that they need so that they're successful during their time at the shelter and when they go home again, if they've lost equipment in a flood or a fire, etc. We also help with disaster relief, which means we help hand out some immediate financial assistance. It's really not a whole lot of money, but it helps people just to get some food and some clothing and whatever their immediate needs are. And again, that's why you need that proof of residence. So, and then we also have great connections with other resources in the community so that we can help people to find the help that they need if we can't offer it. Disaster preparedness is another Red Cross area. That's what we're doing today, is educating. And we also offer fire safety, first aid, CPR, even babysitter classes. Service to the Armed Forces is a great program that the Red Cross offers where we help communicate with the military. We help them to travel in an emergency. I personally am a veteran myself, and when I was 20 years old and stationed in Korea, it was the Red Cross that helped me to come home when my father was sick. We also help hand out supplies to military and veterans. So the important thing to know about the Red Cross is that we are 90% volunteers. So not a lot of money goes toward paid employees. So if people choose to donate money, most of it is going toward helping our clients. And also, I think people get confused. We are not a federal program. We rely completely on donations, and we do not get government money. Next. Volunteers are always welcome. I always like to do a little sales pitch. I love being a part of the Red Cross. And I think everyone has skills to offer. We have worked really hard in the last several years to include anyone despite any possible disabilities or challenges that they have, because there are so many areas that you can work in, that there's always something for everyone in the Red Cross. You can help at home with different activities, or you can deploy like I do across the United States. And this link is for how to become a volunteer. Next. So disability integration is a newer program with the Red Cross. It's about 3 years old. And basically we try to help everyone to have access to all of our programs and services. We want to help people that have functional needs to be as independent as they can be when they're at our shelters, for example. So if they were using a shower chair at home, excuse me, we'll make sure we get a shower chair at the shelter so that they can still be as independent as possible. Obviously, we work on accessibility at our shelters. And we consult, like I told you, about those health services people, so that if there are any needs that are unmet, we can make sure that we're doing the best we can to help people to have, to survive as well as they can with, you know, staying at the shelter or when they go back home again. And we coordinate with interpreters for the deaf community, as well as translators for people who speak different languages. We might even supply a generator so that people can have, this is at a shelter, so that people can use their oxygen or CPAP machines. For someone who has autism, we'll supply sensory kits so that they can stay as calm as possible and handle being in a shelter with a bunch of other people. And we might even supply a pack and play, which would be for an infant, so that the mother doesn't have to hold the baby in her arms when she sleeps each night on a cot. Special transportation needs are also considered. When I was helping with the Iowa derecho, one of my jobs was to figure out transportation home from the hotel back to people's homes after the electricity came on. And some of them obviously were like in wheelchairs or used oxygen. And so we had to make sure that their transportation needs were safe and successful. Excuse me, dietary needs are also another part of disability integration. So when I was helping in Louisiana with the 40 different hotels that I was coordinating the food at, I also had to factor in anybody who had diabetic diets or low sodium because of heart problems, etc. So we try to even think about dietary needs for people. Next. So in a nutshell, disability integration with the Red Cross helps with the 4 items you see here: communication, health, safety, and independence. Red Cross has 2 lingos we call blue skies when there's nothing bad happening. So disability integration might help with what we call shelter surveys to make sure a school, for example, has good accessibility, has enough accessible bathrooms, has a generator, etc. And we also do education. In gray skies, during a disaster, we help to network to make sure that whatever a client needs, we try to meet those needs and have them have a successful experience with the Red Cross. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening to me. And we'll turn it back over to Brad.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any questions? I don't see any that have been mentioned in the question and answer chat box. Are there any questions? I don't see any further questions. With that, why don't we then transfer over to Dave Whalen? Let me get his
Brad, real quickly,
yes.
we have at least one person who's unable to see the ASL interpreter. So I would like to make sure. Kathy, go ahead.
I've split the screen so that the interpreters are highlighted.
Okay. Then Kim, perhaps your screen isn't showing that split on the right. I don't know if you can see, there should be a little mark. There should be a little mark to the right of the PowerPoint that you can slide over so you can see.
This is the interpreter speaking. If she's not able to see the interpreter, she's not able to see me signing those instructions. So we'll have to put them in the chat, because if she can't see the interpreter, then kind of pointless to verbalize them. Sorry.
That would be a duh. I will let her
That's
know
okay.
that. I'm sorry, people.
There's also captioning available too. I've been captioning the instructions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll get right into it. You can hear the interpreter. Can everyone hear me? Looking for interpreter.
Are you able to see me? I'm on.
I can see you. Yep. Okay. Very good.
Yep.
Brad, can you make the present? Yep. Thank you very much. I am very excited to be a part of this program. It's our first delve into Nebraska through funding from the Nebraska Council on Developmental Disabilities. I will, within this context, be both talking about the topic at hand, individual disaster and emergency planning, in an abbreviated manner. The program we're going to bring to your state actually encompasses in its full context 2 full days of training. So note that what we're going to get today is certainly an abbreviated version, but we'll be highlighting the some of the points that we've made, and I'll build off of Julie's excellent informative content. Next page, please. So as we already saw, Richard, if you did not make Richard out, Richard, unfortunately, we lost Richard a couple of years ago. God rest his soul. He has no arms and legs. He's speaking to the disability community, speaking to people with access and functional needs. We need to prepare as if nobody's coming. And the point being made here is that oftentimes people will expect or have at least a thought, especially our senior population, that if they filled out a form or they've talked to someone at 911 or they've had a contact with the emergency management office, that because they know I have a need, someone will come and get me. We can't plan that way. Next. So what's our intentions? Self-preservation, the cognitive ability to do so. Upwards of 30 million Americans have some form of cognitive disability that can affect their ability to self-preserve. 30 million Americans. Physical or sensory disabilities that may put us, while knowing we have to self-preserve or we're in a challenging moment, the sensory disability or the physical disability may not allow us to do that. I should note I'm the parent of 23-year-old twins. My son has spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy, a speech disability dysarthria, seizure disorder, learning disability, low vision. David is a power wheelchair user. So I live this context every day from an awareness standpoint. So we are cognizant that some people may not have the ability to do that, or people who might actually put themselves in harm's way. Some with more involved intellectual disability, profound ID, some with more involved autism, someone with a serious mental health issue, a mental health disorder. So this is paramount to the basis of this. Next. So this is an annual stat, not a specific year. This comes from FEMA. So if you note the number of deaths per year of people with mental disabilities, somewhere in the 70 range, upwards of 180 for people with physical disabilities. The number of fires for people with mental disabilities or cognitive disabilities, and the number of fires for people with physical disabilities. So these are big numbers. You saw it in Julie's note, 1,500 fires a day in this country. But from a population, a specific demographic, these numbers are very telling and certainly concerning. Next. A quick recap of a video here. The Right to be Rescued is actually a 85-page white paper from Adrian Wigbaum. Adrian Wigbaum is from the Yale Law School. If you have a chance to read it, please do so. This is a caption of a 22-minute video that summarizes, kind of like old Cliff Notes. Go ahead, Brad.
Between the water from Lake Pontchartrain and having 2 levees on either side of her. For someone being in a wheelchair on the first floor, when you've got a 30-foot wall of water coming in, there's no hope. I met Benny when I was about 19, 20 years old. The first day that we met was actually in an Italian class. In a very sweet voice, she said, "Hi, my name's Benilda, but my friends call me Benny." And after that, she was always Benny, and she was always my friend. She enjoyed life. You know, she loved chocolates and coffee and smoking her cigarettes. Benny had a rare form of muscular dystrophy. She used an electric wheelchair. She had no use of her 2 lower legs. There was no strength in them. One of her arms she had partial use out of, and the other arm she had pretty good strength in. But then as the years progressed, she was losing some of the strength. She could cook. She always lived, of course, on a first-floor apartment. She had a shower that she could go into. So joy of life and independence were the 2 most important things for her personally. She wanted other people with disabilities to have comfortable lives, to make sure that they were protected, that people didn't take advantage of them. She volunteered with a bunch of disability rights organizations. Anything that she could do to get involved and give back. She had decided that she was going to evacuate. She had called a company that was supposed to come and get her, and she said that they were going to take her to the Hyatt. I did not get a phone call from her that day, and at first I thought maybe she got busy, who knows why, but I thought, well, I'm going to try and call her. I said, "Benny, what are you doing still there?" She said, "Pam, they've abandoned me." She said, "Yes, I spoke to the driver." And I said, why didn't he come and pick you up?" She said, "He told me, I can't come and get you. I've got my own family to worry about." And he hung up on her. The police told Benny that they would take her to the Superdome. They did not want to take her wheelchair or her physical assistant. She physically could not have gotten by without the help of someone, and without her wheelchair, she couldn't have made it. Storm passed. Everything seemed okay. I called, and she let out a huge sigh of relief. And we started talking and just kind of relaxing. Then all of a sudden, she said that she heard something. She goes, "Wait, I hear something." And she goes, "Oh my God, water's coming in." And I could just hear this panic in her voice. And then all of a sudden, the phone line cut out.
The right to be rescued. Click here to watch the whole film now.
Next page, please. Unfortunately, Benilda is the poster child for all that went wrong specific to Katrina. This is actually a FEMA slide. Benilda and her story, unfortunately, we have lost, led to the Post-Katrina Act, which calls for FEMA to now have an Office of Disability Integration and Coordination to address matters at the highest level. Population that still continues to get overlooked, and hence why we're doing what we're doing in your state. So what might an individual need? And one of the points that we're going to make very clear here, I made the comment earlier about people maybe expect emergency support services within their municipality be there. And as Brad said at the beginning, for and by people with disabilities. It's for us to know what our personal needs are, but we also need to, and in the content of our program, is to educate emergency management. So the intent is collaboration, a collaborative effort. So individually, what might a person need? Well, the items you see here: durable medical equipment, medications, adaptive equipment, assistive technology, transportation, and other health and medical needs. Next page, please. What is personal preparedness? First of all, you say the person recognizes they have a disability, and people say, well, of course people. Well, go back to the 30 million people I talked about with cognitive disabilities. Do all recognize that they do. And for those that do, they understand what their emergency preparedness and planning needs are, their personal needs. The millions of people with dementia, people, again, with more involved intellectual disabilities, some people with traumatic brain injury, and so on and so forth. So that's significant. We have our information ready to go. Have we established a support network? You know, who's our first line of support? Our neighbor, person next to us, right? And has personal needs ready to go. I have a residence that services people with developmental disabilities across the street from me. I am in their emergency plan because I have a ramp in my house based on my son's wheelchair needs. It's for women with cerebral palsy. They can access our home if need be, if they were to evacuate tonight. And again, as you heard Julie say, personal needs ready to go. Next slide, please. So network, let's define networks of supports briefly here. Who can you count on? And conversely, who counts on you? So what is our role in our neighborhood, in our family, in our place of employment, in the building we're in? So we assess our own capabilities. To what extent would I need assistance? To what extent don't I need assistance? And we need to teach people how to assist us. We have a video that we provide teaching first responders and emergency managers how to disengage power wheelchairs. They define what these items are. And that's going to be a big part of what our program is defining these topics that from the disability community side, maybe we know it all, but we all don't know it all anyway. There's no such thing as a disability expert. So while the disability that might be in our life, we know well, very well, maybe as an expert. But what about the other disabilities? And then we'll define access and functional needs. So who is our support group? Do we meet with them? Julie made the comment about annually checking your toolkit, your kit. Check your supports annually. I can't have the plan across the street 4 years ago and not talk to the individuals during the pandemic. I did talk to the house man. So let's get up to speed here. And then the carry with you supplies. Next page, please. So here's my son's backpack. And we saw in the video the woman breaking hers apart. What does he need? Straws, rain gear, a change of clothes, his diastat for his potentially for his seizures, the tools to fix his wheelchair. He has some sensory deficits, so he has his earmuffs, flashlight so he can see at night with his low vision. Next page, please. One of the tools we'll be bringing to your state is the Disaster Readiness Planner. So this is something that actually a FEMA grant of going back 15 years ago, and we have maintained a relationship with this group. And this is one of the tools that we'll bring. It's not a handout tool, it's a working tool. Next page, please. And then also in the chat box, if when Brad has a moment, we'll get this in there. These are the two tools that we are currently, I think, are the best. We're proud of the three tools: the Disaster Readiness Planner, the Emergency Evacuation Planning Guide for people with disabilities, and your very personal preparedness survey developed by the Mid-America Regional Council, which is the Kansas City area. We're in Missouri for our first responder grant. They have an outstanding tool that you can access. It's 47 pages. It's everything you need to know to personally check. That'll be in the box. The NFPA, I am on the Disability Accessibility Review and Advisory Committee. I joined that. They asked me to join about 4 months ago. We're actually in the process of this guide. We are updating. I have a meeting tomorrow to update it, which is a process. It's going to take us a few months. We're going page by page, word by word, to update this to make it a fourth edition. So this, while it's a valuable tool right now, it'll have a different look in about, say, 4 or 5 months. But excellent tools, the three that we recommend. Next page, please. And then there's the old registry, which we could spend 20 minutes on, and I have about 10 to finish up here. So registries, some municipalities, emergency management offices will use these for people to identify. They are not the best tool. Many disability advocates that I work with are not fans with them at all. One person commented to me that that's a parent tool. Have I filled mine out in my community? Sure. But what happens is people, as you see at the bottom here, a sense of false hope, especially seniors. I filled out a tool. Someone's going to come and get me when the floodwaters are coming down the street. And we don't want that sense of false hope amongst other areas here. But this is a recognized tool in our state, in the state of New York. Each municipality by state law has to have at least it recognized. So it has to be present, not that it has to be highly functional. Next page, please. Former Administrator Fugate of FEMA. I was honored in March 2011 to go to the White House to see the signing by Mr. Fugate and National Disability Rights Network Executive Director Kurt Decker signing the Memorandum of Understanding saying FEMA will work with the disability community. One of the reasons we're able to do what we're doing here today is based on this signing. Marcy Roth, the woman you saw in the video, the ready.gov video, is the former FEMA Office of Disability Integration and Coordination Director. We have a very good working relationship. Marcy actually has contributed to the content that you're going to be receiving in Nebraska. The invite came from there. But note what he says. My experience tells me if we wait and plan for people with disabilities after we write the basic plan, we fail. Next page, please. And within the structure of emergency planning and preparedness out of the FEMA office are now the 15 emergency support functions. These are the 2 that are specific to people with disabilities. Next page, please. New York City was the 3rd metropolis to lose a lawsuit in response to people with disabilities. The first Oakland, the 2nd Los Angeles, the 3rd New York City. I was on the outskirts of this, had some assistance with Superstorm Sandy from a distance, of course. But this is what the judge said. Unfortunately, despite the obvious importance of accounting for the unique needs of people with disabilities and planning emergencies, New York City's emergency plans, like many state and local emergency plans throughout the nation, failed to do so. The point being, this needs to be an emphasis, and the emphasis is on us personally knowing our needs, but then working with that municipality. Next page, please. And another FEMA page here. What are good practices? You heard integration. Well, planning is about integration. We're all sitting at the table. We don't separate planning to address access and functional needs, be specific about our roles and responsibilities, and we need to work together and work smart. So when I say collaboration, a big component of this is, while we're going to talk we're talking about individual needs, those are not going to be achieved if we're not working with our emergency management offices. Next page, please. So the term that's identified is what we call the whole community. And this actually oval chart, if you will, there's a certain name for this. I always forget what it's called, but is accurate by percentages. People with disabilities make up 26% of the population, as noted by the CDC about 2 years ago. 1 out of 4 Americans have some form of disability. People with access and functional needs make up about 65% of the population. So in essence, 2/3, give or take, are people with access and functional needs. That's the term that FEMA created to identify all who have a need in emergencies. Never say the term special needs when it comes to emergencies. You heard Julie just the same saying access and functional needs. We don't say special needs. Next page, please. And why? I'll get to that in a moment. Whole community planning. It's not just the government that's doing this. We need to be a part of this. It aims to dispel thinking that the government can solve challenges on its own. When I do this program, when we have emergency managers in the office, it is a lesson, as it is for the disability community. The intention, folks, is that we're all sitting at the table. It's all sitting in the same room together. We engage and leverage community partner resources. We have them in this room right here. Disability Rights Nebraska, every group that was noted, the State Independent Living Council and Kathy, and every other group that was noted at the beginning of this. That's who they're talking about with community partner resources. You will all be identified. Next page, please. Because the ultimate goal is what they call a core advisory group in a FEMA created concept. We have 22 of them in New York State. The county which I live in is Erie. We have met 30 times since the pandemic, 20 straight weeks at the beginning of the pandemic. We identified 26 areas of need that we provided to the county, which are being addressed specific to people with disabilities, made up of the Independent Living Center, of Deaf Access Services, National Federation for the Blind, Developmental Disability Service Providers, and other groups as well. Next page, please. What is your checklist? This is it. So we need to define these things. General effective communication. There are 26 different ways to communicate. We have 3 of them going right now. We have CART, we have a sign language interpreter, and we have me verbalizing. 3 forms of communication happening right now. This is what also has to happen during an emergency. We don't just talk sheltering and accessibility, we train on that. We've trained the Red Cross on that. There's a checklist on them ensuring your shelter is accessible. And who do we want doing that? People with disabilities who know what accessibility is. Evacuation, transportation, again, defining all these much more in depth. Next page, please. Because it's about inclusive planning. So the concept we're bringing to your state is inclusive planning and active participation. So we're planning this together. So if you have a relationship with your municipality, the town I'm in has a committee on disabilities that's been meeting for 12 years. We were active at the table at the Emergency Operations Center at the beginning of the pandemic. So we're able to talk about what people may need. Many people with disabilities are not going to speak for themselves. They're not going to call the emergency manager of the municipality or the fire department and say, these are my needs. We need to advocate for those. That's the intent of the groups that are on this. Who's doing this presentation? Disability rights advocates, disability advocates of Nebraska. And that's our responsibility. So part of it is we need to understand what that means as well. You know, we define and break down what that calls for. Next page, please. Active participation is the other side of it. We're inclusive planning, and go back to what Administrator Fugate said. We're all sitting at the table as well. People with disabilities are part of the plan, part of the planning process. Advocacy organizations are assigned to address outreach, provide resources and information. Exercises will always include people with disabilities. Equipment and assistive technology are approved by people with disabilities. Next page, please. So how do we define disability? It's not defined by the diagnosis or the medical term or whatever, or the condition. We define it by a substantial functional limitation in caring for yourself, performing tasks, walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, breathing, learning, working, sitting, standing, lifting, or reaching. Now think of our senior population. Okay. If we live long enough, we will all be joining the disability community or have some form of functional need, which will be defined as disability. Next page, please. So if we nutshell disabilities, this would be our list. And some of these have, if you've ever seen the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, you've seen how thick that is specific to mental health disorders and emotional disability. There's 80 different forms of developmental disability. Next page, please. We're going to skip this for the sake of time, folks. This is on our website, but we will come to this in the future. This will be a part of our program. Next page, please. So in defining, expanding the definition of disability, go to the next page, please. We'll go to the next one too, Brad, for the sake of time here. This is access and functional needs defined. Whoop, go back one, please. Yep. Individuals who are from diverse cultures, races, and nations of origin. Well, that's 65%. How do we get there? Well, if you look at the first two bullets, you can see how we expand just on that. People who can't read, have limited English proficiency, or non-English speaking. The millions of Americans with dyslexia fall in this, just like the millions of Americans who don't speak English as a primary language. 3.5 million Americans use American Sign Language as their primary language. Older adults, period. Children, period. Economical or transportation needs. If you've never seen the video Cooked, Disaster by Zip Code, it explains how people of low income are much more affected in disasters. I highly recommend it. Next page, please. Women who are pregnant, especially late term. People who have chronic medical conditions, pharmacological dependencies, organizations, some on this call, the roles that we play, and people with disabilities. So you see how that 70%, we get to that 65, 70% pretty quick with access and functional needs. It's imperative that emergency managers are recognizing who their community really is made up of. Often overlooked, can't be anymore. Next page, please. So these are some of the things we recognize with COVID-19. No one was prepared for this. The White House failures before and during, and we're certainly not there after. We're hoping the new administration, we anticipate the new administration will be addressing this aggressively. See the things that we already be happening that way. Again, disability lives lost rank at the top, just like every other disaster. Congregate care not considered in planning. Personal protective equipment needs caught everyone off guard. Shelter in place took on a new meaning. We used to say shelter in place planned for 3 to 7 days. Beginning of the pandemic, I talked to people that sheltered in place for 3 months, 4 months. You probably know some of those individuals. We never thought about food supplies and delivery of food before as an agenda item in emergency management. What happened with our hospitals and what's happening today? Turn on the news. What's the first thing you're going to hear? Hospital overload. And then the development of disability services, interruptions and challenges. Next page, please. Plan of action. Recovery is in the planning and preparedness phases. Different now because usually we plan, prepare, then recover. But we're recovering and still planning and preparing. So this is very unique as well. Address your personal protective equipment needs. Stock but don't hoard. Learn how to use them. I did a video with FEMA a few weeks ago on masks. That's archived. You can see how every mask plays out. There's a graph on how every mask works. Identify systems of support, especially those living independently. Essential needs identified. Transportation aligned with needs, information sharing, development with service providers, family members, and others. Testing sites, points of distribution. We talked about, I had calls of people who were wheelchair users who couldn't get dropped off at a testing site. We can't serve you unless you're in your car. And we got to start a core advisory group. Next page. So this will be our objectives when we bring the program to Nebraska. Again, we're going to be very specific to these points. Obviously, this was brief. We're going to get very detailed on personal needs and how we do that both individually, what we need to know to be educated, and how we're going to do that collaboratively with emergency management and the Red Cross, Department of Health, emergency preparedness, firefighters, so on and so forth. And we'll also be emphasizing the ADA, which has a lot of information for emergency management. Next page, please, which should be my last. And it is. So here's our information. Again, we'll be working very closely, obviously, with the Nebraska Council on Development Disabilities, with the Independent Living Council, Kathy, with Brad and the Disability Rights, with other organizations on this group. Some people I've met with already. We had a nice intro. We're going to have some more. So I'm going to stop right there and open it up for questions for Julie and I in the next 40 seconds that we have.
I don't see any questions in, oh, hold on. There was one question. When will the training be taking place in Nebraska? Is there a specific date? And will it be emailed to all of us who are on the webinar?
I would anticipate that everyone in this group who received this is going to get it as we're going to use Brad, yourself, and Kathy and the other groups, the council, of course. I know Tony and Kristen are on here. We're in the development stages. We would anticipate late spring, early summer as well, more like early summer as an objective time frame.
Okay, are there any other questions? If you have a quick question, we can post it, or you can speak it, or you can type it in there real quick. We've got a few seconds here. All right, let's see. I don't see any more questions. And I think with that, Kathy, do you have any parting last words? And I will get those documents that Dave mentioned. I've got the links. I will paste them in the chat box right away. Kathy, do you want to say a last few words before we go while I go post those in the box?
Yeah, I'll do that. First of all, I want to apologize if some people are having trouble seeing the interpreter. I've been working with tech support, trying to get this figured out. And because I do have this interpreter spotlighted, that's what they said you had to do. I will continue working on it after this call. But I wanted to just let everybody know our next session, January 7th and 8th, actually, is going to be on the Nebraska Homestead Plan, which we felt was enough intricacies to it that we needed 2 days. And then on February 4th, we are going to be hearing from the directors of Independence Rising and the League of Human Dignity, the two centers for independent living in Nebraska, about the core services, what they are and what they look like. So I hope people will join us. And I just wanted to make sure you know you will have to register again. I will be sending out the flyer with the link again tomorrow, so you will all be getting it. And I want to thank you for coming. And you have a really good day.
Thank you, everyone, for all you've done.